We are continuing on Masechet Yevamot Daf 36a1. We just finished by saying that according to Shitat Rava, he comes and he says that if a person gets married to his Yevamah, he does Yibum to his Yevimto, and she's found to be pregnant, the Tzara should not get married until she gives birth. Why? Because maybe the blood is going to be a good child, and therefore Biat Me'uberet is not considered a Bia, and the Chalitza Me'uberet is not considered a Chalitza. So therefore, because of that, it's only because the vlad is going to be a good child. So you have to make sure that the child is going to be actually good or not. So the vlad is not going to exempt from Yibum or Chalitza until Yetzeh La'avira Olam, until it goes out to the world. Which means when it comes out to the world, now it exempts the wives or the co-wives from Yibum and Chalitza. Tanya Kavated Rava, we found a bright in accordance to Rava. Akonesi Vimtov and Insen Uberet. If somebody does Knisa, right, he gets married to his Yevamah, and then she's found to be pregnant. She should not get married. Why? The tzara, the co-wife, cannot get married because maybe it's going to be a vlad ben kaima. The en biya v'chalitza poteret, and it's not going to be poter. The vlad poter, but the vlad, the child is going to be poter. Vlad and poter, and the child is not going to exempt until the child comes out into this world. Says the Gemara, ta'amad vlad ben kaimahu. The reasoning is because maybe the child is going to be a good child. Halo avi vlad kaima. But let's say it's not going to be a good child. Miftar tzarata. So then the tzara is going to be p'tura from the yibum of the me'uberet, and he doesn't have to do anything again. So lemat yaftet yufta l'Resh Lakish. Why isn't this a refutation against Resh Lakish? Resh Lakish said that the biya and chalitza me'uberet zeklum zerien. So here it says it is good. So he says, "I'm Resh Lakish." Resh Lakish is going to answer you. Hachi ktani. This is what you mean to say. Hakonesi v'imtov nimtzeh me'uberet harezu lo tinaseh tzarata. If somebody's going to get married to his yevamah and she's going to be found to be pregnant, you should not get married to tzarata. Shema lo yehev vlad ben kaima. Maybe it's not going to be a vlad ben kaima. V'chalitza me'uberet lo shma chalitza. It's not good chalitza because she was pregnant. U'biya me'uberet lo shma chalitza. It's not considered good biya because she was me'uberet. V'im tomar. Now if you're going to tell me halacha char rov nashim, go after the majority of women. V'rov nashim lama yadan. Majority of women, they have a good child. Meaning, why are we going to suspect for an effort, for a miscarriage, or a stillborn? At the end of the day, the majority of women have a good child. So he says, Vlad eno poter she'etzeh la'avir olam. No. So the Vlad is not going to be poter until it comes out to the world. So therefore, you see from here that we don't go after Rov, right? And that's what we're saying. Over here, we're not going after Rov. That's a chidush. We're not going after Rov, and therefore, until the Vlad does not come to la'avir olam, it's not going to come and it's not going to hell. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, if Sharita lehader shakish, it could be that maybe the rabbis even hold according to the shakish. And we didn't learn in our Mishnah. Nafak dak ve'ashkach. So Rabbi Elazar, he went out and he actually found it, right, that the Mishnah was like Shitat Resh Lakish. Titnam, as we learned in the Mishnah. There's a Mishnah later on Daf Yutet Amud Aleph. Over there it says, Haisha shalach ba'ala v'tzarata l'medinat hayam. A woman that her husband went and her tzarata went to Medinat hayam. So imagine, her husband went with the co-wife, but not with her. A guy has a few wives, yeah, and he went with the co-wife to the diaspora, but he didn't go with her. And then they came back to her and they told her, "Mebalech, your husband died. She's not allowed to get married or to do yibum until she finds out that maybe her co-wife is already pregnant." That means basically she has to find out what's going on with the co-wife. She can't just say, somebody came and said that her husband died, now she could do yibum, or now she could go get married to the shul. No, it doesn't help. Why doesn't it help? Because she needs, right, that we mentioned before, right? She needs to find out what's going on with her co-wife. Okay? That's what he's saying. So, Bishlema Yebume Lo, right? Says the Gemara. Bishlema Yebume Lo. I understand now why the Mishnah is going to be Oser Litya Ben, Shemi Evla Ben Kaima Vivka B'Isur Shetach. Right? Doraita, which means like this. What happens if the co-wife is pregnant? If the co-wife is pregnant, is she allowed to do Yibum? Obviously not, because that means he had a child. So if he has a child, is she allowed to get married to the brother-in-law? No, it's a shetach. A shetach is doraita. She's not allowed to get married to the brother-in-law. The brother-in-law is doraita. But why can't she do chalitza? Why can't she do chalitza? What is she losing out now, right, that she cannot do chalitza? So therefore, he comes and he says, so bishlema tachlotz betoch tisha, v'tinaseh betoch tisha, right? Lo. I understand that within the 9 months, right, of the death of the husband, she can't do anything. Why? Because it's hainu safek. It's a safek. Is the child going to be? Is she pregnant? Is the child a good viable child? Is it not a good viable child? But why can't she do chalitza within the 9 months? And then she'll get married after the 9 months. Why? Because at the end of the day, right, even if it was apala, she did the chalitza, so that's good according to Rabbi Yochanan. And even if it was a good child, right, anyway, she did the chalitza. So what's the problem? At the end, she's tura. So says the Gemara, and according to your reasoning, you should actually do chalitza and get married immediately after 9 months. But rather, he says, this Mishnah, you can't bring it as a proof. The Abaye bar Abaye, Chanina bar Abaye, was both of them said also Abaye bar Abba and also Chanina bar Abaye. They both said Shemi Avla ben Kaima. It could be that the child is going to be a good child. And you need to permit her to the kiuna. Because remember, once she has chalitza, she is prohibited to kiuna. Before chalitza, she's permitted to kiuna. Which means, why are we going to come and start making things to permit her to kiuna? Just don't do chalitza. Remember, for her, the chalitza is something bad. Because now she can't get married to a Kohen. Remember, we're talking about Kohen Adil, not Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol, not even a Chalutza. Nobody. Right? Not even a right, nobody. Not even a Manah, nothing. But a Chalutza cannot get married to a Kohen Adil. So now, if you do Chalitza and she really did not need to do Chalitza, you just permitted her to Kohanim. Now you're going to say, no, she's going to become permitted to Kohanim. Why do you want that? So says the Gemara, what's the big deal? Just come and say, right, that Bemet, she's shira for the Keuna. That means even though she did a chalitza, she's still kosher for kiuna, but she didn't need to do the chalitza. So says the Gemara, maybe somebody was there by the chalitza and not by the achraza. Which means like this. Everyone knows that when there's a chalitza being done, everybody comes. It makes a lot of noise. Why? How many times do you have a case of chalitza? You don't have a lot of cases of chalitza. So when there's a case of chalitza, everybody comes to see what's going on with the chalitza. So now what happens? You want to make a karoz afterwards. The karoz is like announcements. So you're coming and you're making announcements that really, listen, we did the chalitza to this woman, but she didn't really need chalitza because the sister-in-law was pregnant and she had a child and it was a good child. So she was an amana. She didn't need to do chalitza. So she's permitted to a kohen. And then what? You permitted her to get married to a kohen. What happens is that maybe somebody was by the chalitza, not by the announcement. So if she's only going to be by the chalitza, not by the announcement, it's going to be a problem. So because of that, he says, people are going to say that she's permitted to a kohen, even though she's a chalutza. We don't want that problem. So therefore, we don't want to do these things. So Elmaleh Abaye comes and he says, Midi lo tachlot selot titibem ktani. Does it say in the Mishnah that she shouldn't do chalitza and she shouldn't do ibum? It says lo tinaseh velo titibem. It doesn't talk about chalitza. It talks about getting married to somebody else and ibum, right? So he says, so the Mishnah is not talking about that. The kavanah is even without chalitza. So it says avali chalitza. But if be'emet she did chalitza, even within the 9 months, she should be permitted. There should be no problem. She should actually be permitted. Okay? So she should be permitted to get married after the 9 months. Right? Why? There's a proof to Rabbi Yochanan that the biyah and the chalitza are kosher even though she's pregnant. So Tanya Kavateh de Reshakish, we learned in a bright according to Reshakish, hacholetz lemeuberet vipila, tzicha chalitza min ha'achin. If somebody did chalitza to a woman that she's pregnant and then she had a miscarriage, she needs to do a new chalitza from the brothers. So this is a proof to Reshakish that the chalitza of a meuberet does not help at all. It's nothing. Okay? So Amar Rava says, Hilchata Kavateh de Reshakish v'hani tlat. The halacha is like Reshakish and these 3 halachot. Chada hadamra, one of them is the one that we just mentioned. Meaning like this, usually we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, right? And not like Reshakish. There are 3 halachot that we pass like Reshakish, not like Rabbi Yochanan. One of those 3 is this halacha that we just mentioned. Which means that according to Reshakish, the chalitza of a meuberet and the yibum of a meuberet is a klum, it's nothing. And that's why you need avchana. You have to make sure that by that it's 3 months, right? That it's avchana. Okay? One of them is just that which we just said right now. That which just said that means we pass like Reshakish, that the chalitza meuberet is not a chalitza and the yibum meuberet is not a good yibum as well. Idach, the other halacha that we pass like Reshakish, the Tanam we learned in the Mishnah Batra Kuf Kavav Mudalev. Hamchalek nechasav al piv. Imagine a person comes and he's being mechalek his properties to his children, right? Not like a Yerusha Regila, right? So he comes and they're doing it according to his mouth, and he kept quiet. What happens right now if he gave more to one and less to another one? And he made the bechor equal to everybody else. He didn't give him double portion. It's going to be a good halukah, right? But why? Because it's considered like a present. It's not considered like a Yerusha, like an inheritance. But if he said that he's doing it Mishum Yerusha, Lo Amar Klum, it doesn't help. Why? Because then he's going against the Torah, and everyone that's going against the Torah, his Tanai is batel. Remember, according to the Torah, the Bechor gets double portion. If he's doing it like a matana, he's allowed to give a matana. It's still during his lifetime. So he could give a present, and he could give more to one, less to another one. And he doesn't have to give Fishan. He could give whatever he wants. Why? It's a present. Matana. But if he's giving him Yerusha, it's batel. It's a noun. Katav ben batchila ben masov ben mishum matana. But if he wrote, it doesn't matter whether it's at the beginning or the end or the middle. He wrote down that it's going to be matana. For example, he says tinaten sadeh ploni liploni l'shena, right? Or the emsa. He says tinaten lo v'irashena. Or the end. Tevarav kaimim. It's why? Because it's still considered a matana, right? Even though it also has a lashon Yerusha. And even though in the document it also says Yerusha and inheritance, but the fact that he also mentioned matana, doesn't matter whether it's at the beginning, middle, or end, it's a matana. Okay? Doesn't matter. Once it's a matana, you could do whatever you want. Matana is a present. There's no dinim. There's no dinim of, okay, Lamevav Mubet, 36b. The Amar Reshakish says, Reshakish, Leolam lo kanad shiomar, ploni uploni yishut sadeh ploni to ploni shenetutim lahem b'matana v'yirashum. He says that the matana has to be on both of them, which means that the lashon of the matana has to be on everything. Because if not, then we're going to say to one person he gave a matana, and to another person he gave into Yerusha. So therefore here the Shakish is saying, lashon matana is not good enough just at the beginning, middle, or end. The lashon matana has to be on everything. So that way I cannot say, no. He gave to Ploni b'matana, and he gave to Ploni b'Yerusha, and he gave to Ploni b'matana. No. Everybody was a matana. It doesn't matter, but it had to be that it's going on everybody. If everybody's going to be on matana, so then it's going to be okay. So says the Gemara, so that's the second time where we pass like Resh Lakish and not like Rabbi Yochanan. Third time, Be'idach Titznan, we learned in the Mishnah of Bata Kuvla Mevav Mudalef, HaKotev Kol Nechasav Livno Le'achar Moto. The person writes all of his properties to his son after his death. Okay? So now remember, during the life of the father, right, the zechut of the eating of the perot belonged to him. Ha'av eno yachol limkor, the father cannot come and sell the properties, because he already gave the body, right, laben, to the son. Meaning the fact that he wrote his properties to his son, right, which he says, so he said the properties are from today until after death. So therefore, since right now he already gave the body of the properties, he gave the actual karka, he gave it already to his son, he cannot sell it anymore. Okay, but the son cannot sell it because it's in the reshut of the father still to eat the perot. Meaning here you've got perot and you've got the gufa karka. The gufa karka he already gave it to the son, but the perot, as long as the father is alive, he's still allowed to eat this. By the way, even until nowadays they do these certain things. That they do like a type of a thing that they'll give the property over to their children, so therefore it's not considered an inheritance, but with certain conditions that the father still has the rights over it, as long as it's still alive. And by doing that, right, he's still safe, that he still has the perot or whatever it is that he has. Machara, if the father came and he sold the properties, mechurim, they're going to be sold ad sheyamutu until he dies, right? Because then, once he dies, it goes back to the son. Machara ben, if the child sold it, en la lokach klum shivutav. So then the purchaser has nothing until the father passes away. Okay? Ve'itmar, and it was stated. Machara ben b'chayav, right? What happens if the son sold it during the lifetime of the father? The meta ben, and then the son died in the life of the father. Rabbi Yochanan says, lo kana lokeach, the lokeach didn't acquire anything. And the Shakish says, kana lokeach, that he does acquire it. So therefore, that means when the father dies, so then he does acquire it. So therefore, according to we paskin like Shakish is the third case, that the purchaser purchases it. That means even though the son sold it before the death of the father, and technically it's nothing until the death of the father, and now the son dies, still it's the second the father dies, it goes to the purchaser. That's the Shita of Shakish, and that's how we pass it. The Gemara is going to explain the machloket. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Lo kana lokeach." The lokeach does not, the purchaser does not purchase it. Kinyan perot ki kinyan aguf tami, because the purchasing of the kinyan of the perot of fruits is like kinyan aguf. The Shakish Amar, Shakish says, kana lokeach, that he does purchase it. Kinyan perot lav ki kinyan aguf, because kinyan perot is not. That means basically the machlok between them. Do you say that the fruits is like the kinyan of the entire property or not? Okay, so therefore Rabbi Yochanan held that the lokeach does not require anything because kinyan perot is like kinyan aguf, and therefore since everything still belongs to the father, the son cannot sell anything. So since the son couldn't sell anything and then the son died, so kadish kamarnu. But the Shakish holds kana lokeach. Why? Because kinyan perot is not like kinyan aguf dami. And therefore, even though the father had the pirot, he doesn't have the goof. So the son sold the goof. The second that the father dies, now this purchaser takes the goof. We said in the Mishnah, 2 dots. En avlad shel kayama. We said that if somebody gets married to his Yevama, and then she's found to be pregnant. So we said it all depends whether the child is going to be a good child or not a good child, whether it's going to live or not live. Tana Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Amru. The Tana said in the right in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, Yotzi beget. He's not allowed to stay married to her. Why? There was a knas. The fact there was a penalty, the fine. The fact that he got married to her without waiting to find out if she was pregnant or not, they give him a penalty. You have to divorce her with a get right away. Okay? So Amar Rava says, Rabbi Eliezer said this exact same thing. Rabbi Eliezer, what we just mentioned right now, that means we make a knas, and therefore he has to give a get. Rabbi Meir, the Tanya Rabbi Meir was we not in the right. Lo yisayet me'uberet chavero meneket chavero. A person should not get married to the pregnant wife of his friend or the meneket chavero. V'im nasa yotzi. If he does, he has to get rid of her. Which means like this. Now we're not talking about yibum. Forget about it. A person came, and whether they died or whether they got divorced, doesn't matter what happened. So it says a person is not allowed to get married to a woman if she's pregnant or if she's feeding. Why? And if she does get married to him, yotzi v'lo yachzir olamit. He has to give her a get, and he's never allowed to get married to her again. These are the words that are being. Why it's a knas? Because he was aver al takra chachamim. We're going to explain why. Chachamim say yotzi, but when she'agia zmano lichnos yiknos. No, you have to give her a get. But now, when it passes the time that now he's allowed to get married to her, now he could get married to her again. So according to Rabbi Meir, it was a knas forever. But according to the next shita, which is chachamim, no. It's a knas for now. Get divorced from her. Then afterwards. Why? Very simple. Because if she's pregnant, the Gemara is actually going to mention it, I think later on, that maybe he's going to crush the child, right? Because when he's having relations, right? No, but not because he wanted to do it with chavana. That's just naturally. Nothing to do with chavana, nothing to do with killing a child, nothing to do with it. Slicha, no. It's nothing to do with it. No, it's mamash, it's a ta'ut. So I'm making sure it is not true, right? The reason why is because this new husband, he doesn't have rachmanut on the child, right? Because it's not his child. So if he's going to have relations with her, and then he's putting too much pressure, he could actually kill her. The same thing with meneket chavero. Meneket chavero, what happens? She's going to become pregnant now. She becomes pregnant, the child, and she can't feed the child. If she can't feed the child will die. So because of that also. So this is nothing to do with a brother-in-law again. This is nothing to do with anything. Regular case. A woman just got divorced, and she's pregnant, or she's feeding. You cannot get married to her until she finishes feeding, or until after she gives birth. Halakha, nothing to do with Yibum, nothing, completely different, left field, completely different. But it's the concept was the same, that we make a knas. And the knas is that they're not allowed to get married. So Elmaleh, halakha shalayom, Shulchan Aruch mefurash. Elmaleh Abaye comes and he says to Rabbi, Mimai, how do we know? It says over here, how do we know, right, that it's going to be the exact same yisod? Maybe it's not true. Rabbi Eliezer was someone over there. There, the Rabbi Eliezer was talking about Yibum. So since Rabbi Eliezer was talking about Yibum, and the guy did not wait for the sister-in-law to find out whether she was pregnant or not, he was Eshetach. So that's why we made a knas. But over here, the Rabbanan, it's only a din de Rabbanan. That means you're not allowed to get married to your friend's wife, right? We're not talking about Yibum. We're not about Ishur the right of Eshetach. We're talking about whether the guy got divorced or he died, but it's not Yibum. Nothing to do with Yibum. Now you're not allowed to get married to the wife when she's pregnant or when she's feeding. So he says the Rabbanan. So Rabbanan Sfirale, Inami, or you could say another way. When the Rabbi Meir say over there, because of the Rabbanan, which means that the rabbis made a chizuk stronger than the words of Torah. Because the words of Rabbanan, they had to strengthen it to make sure people are not going to be over the Rabbanan. Say, those are the rabbis. So because of that, they strengthened their words even more than Shel Torah. Here's Toraita. Since it's Safek Toraita, he's going to separate from her. If it's a din de Rabbanan, maybe he's still going to continue having relations with her. So there they made a chizuk. No, you have to get divorced. But if it's a Doraita, they come and they tell the guy, Mr. So-and-so, do you know that your wife, your brother's wife is pregnant? That means maybe it was from your brother. Now, if you're living with her, that's a Yisur Doraita. Oh, he's going to separate. He's not going to do it. So maybe we didn't make a knas. So you cannot compare Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer together. Maybe it's two different halachot. Samar Rava, and Rava says, well, divrei chachamim, according to the chachamim, yotzia beget, take her out with a get. Samar Morzuta says, Zaykana midiktani, you could actually deduce it from that which we learned. Yotzi, velo ktani yafrish. From the fact that it says yotzi means you have to give her a get, you have to take her out. Yafrish just means separate her, that you could leave her married, but just don't have relations with her. So therefore, from the fact that it's written Yotzi, that's a proof that you have to give a get. Shema mina. Amare Ravashi Rav Oshaya. Says Ravashi to Rav Oshaya. Bered Ravidi, the son of Ravidi. Hatam Tznan, over there we learned in a Braita, Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer, Rashbag says, Kol sheshaha ba'adam 30 yom enu nefet. 30 days, it's not an effort. That means what's considered a child after 30 days that he lives. If he lives for 30 days, it's not considered an effort. Halo Shah, but if it wasn't 30 days, it's still a safek. The Itman was stated, Met v'toch 30 yom, what happens if he died within 30 days? And then she went and she got married to a person in the shul. So what happens? If she is the wife of Israel, meaning there wasn't a kiddushin of a kohen, she has to do chalitza. Why? Because he says it was a safek. So since it's a safek, so he says maybe be'emet it was a nefel and therefore it's a kval yavam. If it's a kohen, she does not do chalitza because again we're going to be somech that the vlad was a ben kayama and therefore she's going to be ptura from the zikah. She always has to do chalitza, right? And therefore it's going to be a problem because once she does chalitza, she's prohibited to the husband, the kohen. So Amaleh Ravina the Mashashia be'orta maravachi. This is what he said in the nighttime. But then he retracted in the morning and Amaleh and he said sharitu, right? Well, you permitted her even without chalitza. It should be also permitted even eating chelef, even prohibited fat should become prohibited. Which means that obviously we're going to mention tomorrow about the entire concept of permission or prohibition.